All right, here's what I'm going to not do. I'm not going to tell you about how important AI is, because you probably already know that. I'm not going to even tell you necessarily if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's a thing that we need to be aware of and to use for the impact of the kingdom that Jesus has placed in our hands, much like every other technological advance that has good and bad things to it. I'm not going to do a lot of ethical debates around whether or not it's sentient. I think those are kind of silly. AI is a conversational library, and it does matter what the books are in it. And if the only books you're reading and the only books that you're having a conversation with or input on are the wrong ones, well, yeah, that can be a problem. But there is so much good that can come out of the library that I think it's not particularly wise to want to burn all the books. So I feel like AI, obviously here to stay. Will it take your job? Probably not. But I'm hoping it'll take your tasks, especially the dumb ones. And while AI might not take your job, someone using it could. So it's definitely a force multiplier that should be used for the kingdom. And whether you think of it as a friend or an enemy, I think it might be even better for us to think of it as a frenemy. And that's what I want to talk about, is the art of AI Jiu-Jitsu, how to use AI as almost an adversarial network against itself sometimes and against the things that tend to be its weaknesses, so that the church can shine as the human community that Jesus has wanted it to always be, and to let AI do well what it does well, and let the church do what it does well. And you as a pastor to do what only pastors can do, and to leave the dumb work to the robots. So make AI your frenemy. That's kind of where I'm headed right now. So in the world of AI, particularly when we're thinking about the future of AI, it is really tough because things are moving so quickly to not be like the music industry or the video industry, TV, movies, that tend to, with this type of technology, become commodities. Where this keeps you from not being a commodity are the big players. There are three ways to not be an AI commodity, that AI will take your job or portions of your job. And here's how you do it. You either own the data, own the compute, or own the model. I'm talking about in the AI industry at large. If you think about all of the big players that are out there in the space, this is probably why they're making the decisions they're making. Because, for example, NVIDIA owns the compute. A lot of other players own the data. It's kind of all over the place. There are lots of businesses that are trying to own the model, whether that is Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, a lot of these big players. And by the way, there are some Christians that are trying to own the model too. And I applaud their efforts. That is very difficult work to do. And so for our friends at Glue and Apostle AI and all of these guys that are trying to not create wrappers around foundational models, but actually create the model themselves and use it for kingdom purposes, I applaud their efforts. I'm not entirely sure where that is going to head, but I do know this. Your average church, your average pastor can't own the compute, nor can they own the model. And there's really only one thing left for pastors to potentially own when it comes to being able to use AI without becoming a commodity for the sake of their congregation, their flock, their church, and that is to own the data. Now, it is interesting as we look at the different areas of the industry today. One could look at Google and say, well, they kind of own all three. They own the data, they own the compute, they have their own TPUs, they own the model. Amazon, the Gemini model, Amazon is looking at trying to own the compute with their new TPUs that they've announced a few weeks back. And they own a lot of data. But they're using, and they have a few models. They're not that great, but they're trying. Microsoft, they own a lot of data. They have a lot of compute. They're struggling with the model. Meta, look at this. According to these, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to gain control of all three. So I believe it is not by accident that Apple has decided, for example, that Google would be, or Gemini would be their AI of choice because they own all three and are doing really well on that. And just little pro tip, Gemini has the largest context window, and that can be leveraged to do a lot of other really cool things. But when it comes to your average church, they don't own the compute. I don't know of any churches that have their own TPUs or NPUs, and they don't usually own the model unless they're renting it from Glue or Apostle or something like that. But one area they do have, and that is they do own the data. So when it comes to the data, I feel like that's where the opportunity really lies. So here's some questions to think about and to ask yourself and your organization as a church around AI data. Who owns the prompts? The question is probably becoming even more valuable than it already was. And I don't think it's by accident that in Scripture you find Jesus asking a lot of questions. And if he were alive today, on the earth, today, and we know he's alive, but on the earth like he was in the first century, he would be owning those prompts, man. he would be, because he was really good at questions. Now the question then becomes for you, as your staff, as your church and your congregation is asking AI questions, who owns that? Because that might be your advantage that you may not be realizing that you already have. So, can the prompts be reused and leveraged for future efficiencies? Those are really valid questions. Can they be shared amongst your staff? Do you have a system to share the prompts? When one works really well, how can you repeat that in the future? So that you're not spending all of your time interacting in this chain of prompts over and over and over and over, wasting a bunch of time. Be able to save those as context, be able to share those, whether those could be Gemini gems or Claude skills. There's a lot of different ways in which the industry is looking at ways in which organizations, and I think the church is the best one around in the world, can reuse those prompts and thereby lessening the number of token burn that you would have. So, and then that brings up the next question, who owns the tokens? So who pays for that? A lot of times, if you're using free tools, which usually have a limit on them and are being mined for, making it better, and that's okay. Be really careful about who owns that stuff and where that data goes, and who pays for it. Because if your employees, as a pastor and your staff, if they're using rogue tools and their own favorite pet thing that they like, they own the prompts and they're paying for the tokens. When they walk away from your organization somewhere down the future, because leadership is always temporary, much of that compounded value will go right out the door with them. So much in the same way where a good IT manager would save the data that they have produced during the time in which the staff was in employment at the organization. Dude, do that with your prompts. Do that with the interactions. Do that with the shared locations that you are helping your staff with. That's just going to help you in the future. And therefore, building contextual equity around the data of our church. So start building a knowledge base of best practices around the use of these prompts. So if you have a weekly, because we all have weekly Sunday stuff that we do, build the prompts such that you can reuse them week after week after week instead of reinventing the wheel every time you are met with a prompt with a blinking cursor. You shouldn't be doing that. You should have skills at the ready for not only yourself to make things faster, but for your staff. Whoa, this would be just a really great way of onboarding new staff with the compounded equity and context of around the data of your church and what has worked from before. Wow, what a great way to get new staff and new volunteers up and running really, really quickly. So take advantage of the way in which you are organizing the prompts for the future. And within security reason, make connections between AI and the data. Now, all that said, make sure that the data it has connection with, that it is secure. And I'm not going to get into all the details around how important that is. But if you give a prompt that has access to all your church's data on a chatbot publicly, look out. And if you don't have any control around it, just be careful. There are all kinds of ways that you can spin up MCP servers of private data of your church and do crazy things, especially if, and here's where it gets really tricky, especially if it has not only unlimited read access, and there's all kinds of privacy concerns there, but security concerns around write access. Just be careful, because sometimes when AI hallucinates and starts writing blueberries all over your church data, you think duplicates are a problem? Hallucinations can be a huge issue. So just word of the wise there, be careful. But it's not to say it's not valuable and you shouldn't use it. I think you should. It is wonderful context around how to make AI really powerful. Not just, summarize this and make me small group questions for that. No. We're talking like real insights because it has a real data to work with. Under the right environment, in the right sandbox, hugely powerful to notice trends that one wouldn't normally. And then I would really recommend that you catalog these prompts in context and create a standard for your church, just like one would do for a style guide on your visual identity. It would be really wise for you to create somewhat of a standardized prompt identity, AI identity, in the way in which you are interacting with these powerful tools. So that is the question to ask around your church's AI data. So, and the reason why is because content is no longer the king, especially in the generative AI world. Context is. And there is an immense amount of context that you as a pastor have with your church that AI will never have. And that's where your contribution and your synergy with these powerful AI tools can become your superpower. No one can take that from you, Pastor. You have it already. So when you're thinking about all the different ways in which AI can help, generally they're content related. And I believe that in the new era of church, content is no longer going to be the thing that draws people into your church. It's going to be the context, the community, the way in which relationships are formed. Those are going to be the ways in which your church is going to stand out amongst all of the other access to all the other content and all the other AI slop that's out there. That's how you're going to create, you're going to stand out amongst all of the other areas in which AI is going to be trying to get attention. Because the unfortunate reality is that these AI models use sycophancy as a tool for, it's like they're designed for dopamine. They're not designed for truth. And that's why they hallucinate. They give you what they think you want to hear rather than what you actually need. And you, as a pastor and a church leader, have the incredible advantage of being able to give people what they actually need, Jesus, rather than what they think they want. So I believe that making AI your frenemy really helps us to drill into what it means to be actually human. And that's what you are, Pastor. You are human. And only humans can have that soul-to-soul relationship, that spirit-to-spirit relationship. And no one can take that from you. Leverage that. Make that be what sets you apart from all the other things that are out there in society. You can have relationships. You can care. You can speak truth, not just what people's itching ears want to hear, but rather the cold, hard truth that sycophancy will never provide. And your physical presence. And I'll give you a really good example of this. I was in a car accident a couple days ago, and my pastor tomorrow is going to drive up with the church's car, with the church's insurance, to help out. AI couldn't do that for me. It might give me all kinds of answers, but it's not going to give me actions. So if you drill into and leverage what AI is not, and use AI for what it can do, then you will stand out in the crowd amongst all the other things that are trying to attract attention. And I feel like if we were to make the expression of our church actually less content driven and more relationally driven, and how that affects the way in which we do church and the way in which we do our services, and spend way less time fixating on wordsmithing. Let AI do that stuff. It does a great job. I have no problem whatsoever as research to have AI take a look at what I'm thinking through in a passage of scripture and creating almost an adversarial network in which I can pit an AI against another AI, or use an AI to look at what I would like to say from a blind spot that I as a human have, because I don't have all the experiences as it relates to other cultural contexts, other ways in which other generations look at the truth in which I would like to communicate. use AI as a way to bounce my sermon off of it within the context of how Gen Z would look at it. How would a millennial look at it? How would a person from another country look at it? Or that's coming in as an immigrant, how would they look at it? Or another race or an ethnicity, or another religion. You would be amazed at the different perspectives, because AI has them all, how they would critique some of your sermon content and how you can get better at it because of it. So use AI as an adversarial network, like your frenemy, to understand what is in the minds and the hearts of your congregation, not only in ways that you haven't been thinking, but also as a way because you know that they're asking the same questions of AI. So if they're asking those questions, you probably should too, so that you can get in their heads and get into their hearts and to answer the questions that maybe you weren't thinking of, but that AI is surfacing when they ask those questions. I believe those are the types of opportunities that you have. You can change the emphasis of your church to community and relationship. Spend some time thinking about how you can do that in the church service itself, to spend time praying for one another. So AI can't do that for you. They can make great summaries and maybe come up with a few ideas, but it cannot produce actions. And here's another thing. Because of the way that AI tends to be so personalized, maybe it's time for us to zig when AI zags and to focus on what our community and our common ethos is. You know, that kind of harkens back to the old school creeds, old school, theological treatises, doctrines, those sorts of things. The things that are not going to change in a world where everything is changing so rapidly, and it feels as though you can't trust anything anymore because you don't know if it's a deep fake or not. You don't know if it's real or not. To know what Pontius Pilate asked Jesus, what is truth? I believe answering that question on behalf of the people that we are serving that are more confused than ever, as so many opinions and so many ideas are thrown at them as if they were truth. I think it's our opportunity to tell the truth, even if it's painful. And because it's painful, it somehow rings more true than if it weren't. And of course, say the truth in love. All of that is true, right? In love, of course, because without love, you're just a clanging gong, or how 1 Corinthians 13 talks about it, clashing cymbals. I feel like we've got such an opportunity here, guys, to use AI to do all of the things that we don't like doing anyway. I mean, what pastor likes admin and a lot of this study research stuff? Let AI do all of that grunt work for you, but let that then not turn you into an AI zombie where you become its slave, but rather you make it your slave while you focus on what really matters, the relationships, the people, and use AI as your frenemy to bounce ideas off of and to use one AI against another to make it better. Sometimes I do that too, or I'll use Gemini against Claude. And it is amazing how after they duke it out and get answers that are so much better because of it, much like how humans bounce ideas off of each other and come to a greater consensus. So having AI as something to bounce off of can be a really healthy and constructive thing, particularly since it doesn't get offended when you ask it really pointed questions that might be a little embarrassing or awkward. Ask it all kinds of questions that way, and give it access within sandboxes to the context that only you can provide, and then spend most of your time doing things that AI can't and never will be able to do. I feel like is a great way for you to spend your time. And then once something you find works, take that prompt, copy it, share it with your team, create an ever-growing compounding library of guides with which you can help your staff level up as you do. And who knows, you might find that you have someone on your staff that is doing it really, really well. Wouldn't it be great to learn from that and use it too? I think so. So as we work on these things together, I think we have a great opportunity before us, because the data in which we can give AI context around the answers that it gives, that's our opportunity. We can be, when we want us to use this, because if we walk away from it and don't use it, then it will take a life of its own in ways that are not going to be helpful for society. In the same way where I want more voices writing books, doing podcasts, spreading the message of truth, of the gospel in all the different mediums possible, including prompts, because the AI is learning from them, and it should learn from us who hold the truth and are being led by the Spirit of God. This is our opportunity to do this together. I hope this was helpful. And I hope that you think of AI as not only an assistant, but as a frenemy that can be leveraged for the good of the gospel. And I look forward to seeing ways in which your staff together can grow and work on these tools together as you give it the right kind of context for the right type of ends that you're hoping will create the actions and the relationships and the things that only you as humans can do. What I love about all of this ideas around AI being sentient and all that kind of stuff, which I think is kind of ridiculous, what it is doing is that it's highlighting what it means to truly be human as an image bearer of God. Be proud of it. No one is going to come close to it. And your context and your knowledge around your flock, no one can touch. I hope that this has been an encouragement to you. And I pray that Jesus, with the help of the tools that he has given us, with all the technology that he's given us, will make his kingdom come together as we work on this together.